What's that? Good morning. I'm Dean Nichols. Been to KansasFest, I think 5 or 6 times now. Beautiful Kansas City. Why come to Kansas City from where I live? I don't know. It must be the people that I come to see. I live in what is colloquially known as Silicon Valley. Born and raised here. And really enjoy the place. Wonderful weather. A lot of people there. And I understand it has one of the highest cost of living of any place in the U.S. So it's one of the problems. This little A marks where I live. The local airport, San Jose Municipal Airport, which is where I try to fly in and out of. It's just a couple miles away. This area is San Jose, Sunnyvale, Cupertino. Apple Computer headquarters is right in this neck of the woods. Moffett Naval Air Station is home to the dirigibles from the earlier part of the 19th century. They've got a large hangar there called Hangar 1, humongous thing to hold the dirigibles, and then they've got some smaller outer buildings that they used to store planes that were for blimps, which are the non-rigid devices. They're in the process of tearing down Hangar 1. They wanted to just take off the sheathing, which had all sorts of toxic chemicals, asbestos and lead and all sorts of stuff, and then resheath it. They've started taking off the sheathing, but in the last couple of weeks, the federal government withdrew any funding for redoing it. So I have a feeling it's one way to get rid of that huge landmark, which is called Hangar 1. Fairly close by is the headquarters of a company called Google. Yahoo is in that neck of the wood. Most of your Silicon Valley industry goes from Palo Alto up here, down here, surrounding what we call the 101. In the early history, much of the stuff north of 101 was actually bay, but over the years it has been filled in. The area was originally settled by, well, first there were local Indians called the Ohlone Indians. In the late 1840s, the Mexicans came in. There's a couple missions. We've got missions running up and down the state. These were some of the last missions. There's one in Santa Clara, just a mile or so from where I live. And there are some other ones farther up. Most of the land until the early 1920s was just open land for grazing. In the 1860s, when the gold rush appeared, which was in 1849 and later, the Caucasians came in from the U.S., became a state soon after 1849. The Americans took over a lot of the Mexican land grants, and some of the land grant properties were still allowed to survive. But many of them were broken up into smaller parcels, and the big planting was wheat and also a lot of groves of not so much citrus, but more apricots, prunes. I know when I was little, 1/3 of the world's supply of prunes was produced in an area from about here to here. So a lot of prune trees, not many people. Really didn't start growing until just about World War II, when the build-up from the war occurred. Soon after World War II, we had the electronics industry starting to grow. It was a good place to go because it was a nice place to live. We had a couple major universities, Stanford, which is up here. What is now called San Jose State University. At that time, it was just a state college. It was down here in San Jose. And Berkeley is up here. So some major educational institutions. So they had some bright people coming out, good quality of people, well educated. And they tended to start out mostly in the Stanford area, around Stanford. And slowly moved down. Manufacturing came into the Mountain View and Sunnyvale area. Fairchild was a big company. The traitorous band of 8 is part of Fairchild, and that's how it goes. But there's a lot of electronics industries in the area. One of the places I'm going to be showing you tonight is going to be the Computer History Museum, and that's located right here, but again, very close to Moffett Field. So, this is an aerial view of the city at the turn of the century, downtown San Jose. It was actually taken from a blimp or a balloon, and it looks out over San Jose, and I think this is pointing east.
Did you post that on Facebook?
I'm sorry?
I've seen that picture before. I'm just not sure where.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I got it, but I thought it was interesting because the country has changed quite a bit. I can recognize some of the buildings, but much of the stuff isn't there anymore. For example, the railroad yard is there, but just a shade of its former self. And much of the valley looks much like this if you ignore the houses in the background. This is right across the street from where my mom lives. This was taken about 1.5 years ago. And like everything else in the valley, all the orchards are being plowed under and they're building houses. And that's what's happened with this property. They've done an amazingly quick job of bulldozing this out and building a bunch of houses. And this was an isolated plot of land in the Mountain View, Los Altos area, one of the largest ones in the area. Again, no longer exists today. Mustard there, and again, oftentimes that was used just as a fallow crop between the rows of fruit trees during the winter time. We tend to rain in the winter, no rain in the summertime. And a couple of years ago, I went to Boston for the last Macworld Expo and saw some strange characters there, met up with them at lunch. And a friend of mine is Peter Baum. He and his older brother and his father were early investors in Apple. Apple was organized as a corporation on April 1st, 1976. This loan agreement was dated April 6th, 1976. It's a $5,000 loan with interest. It was a 3-month loan with a loan amount of $250. And this gave them the amount of money they needed to buy parts to build the first Apple ones. That's my understanding. So this is an interesting document. Alan, his older brother, is still around. He was an early programmer for Apple. If you look at some of the early Apple ROM code, his name is on it. His father, Elmer Baum, was a electrical engineer, analog engineer, not a digital one. And at the time, he was, I understand, unemployed, but his son was so gung-ho on Apple that he talked his dad into loaning him $5,000 to get the company started. And the loan was paid back in the agreed upon time. And both Steves were, thankful enough for that initial investment. His dad, Elmer, was promised a job for life, and he did work until he died a couple of years ago. Very interesting fellow. Wish I had a chance to talk to him more, but I did see him fairly often. Alan I see fairly often, and the younger middle son, Peter, is a good friend of mine. He was an Apple engineer. Unfortunately, he had a stroke a couple of years ago, affected his memory capacity. So a lot of the stuff that he did for early Apple, he was one of the designers of the Apple desktop bus. He designed the the RamWorks card, the 80-column extended memory card, and sold that to Applied Engineering. So he's a pretty bright guy. Unfortunately, he just doesn't remember any of that stuff. And a group of us have been meeting since about 1978, 79. We started meeting out at the gentleman's house who was a early inventor, lawyer, that sort of thing at his house once a month. He's since passed away, but this group still meets every Saturday at a local McDonald's, not too far from Fry's Electronics, which is a major electronics chain in the area. And we shoot the breeze from about 1 o'clock till 2:30, sometimes as late as 3 o'clock on Saturdays. People have a chance to get together and then go over to Fry's or one of the other electronic stores in Kansas, the staff there, picking up on all the deals and that sort of thing. This is Peter Baum on the right, Walt Gurney, who's a retired military guy, Bill Vorbaugh, retired pilot, long-time Apple user. Doug Scott is to the far left. He's a programmer, was an Apple employee, was working with their early Macintosh production, was in charge of assigning the serial numbers to the machines when they were built in the US. And this is George. He's a retired from AMD, American Micro Devices, has his own company, and they make custom chips. And apparently the design on the chips is pretty good, and they're doing pretty well. Every year in the summer, during the equinox, the Baums often will sponsor a party. And this is one from a year or two ago. Again, Peter Baum in the middle, and Doug Scott. This is Alan Baum, our host. This is a swap meet we have during the summer months at a local junior college. They took over the parking lot. The vendors start arriving at 3 or 4 in the morning. They're all set up by sunrise, which is about 6. And people from all over the area come in and pick up their electronic doodads. Again, usually surplus stuff. It's sponsored by the local electronics radio relay leagues and a couple other organizations. They alternate as to who's the sponsor, but the vendors come in, pay for their space, and sell whatever they can. Usually the best stuff is gone by 8 or so in the morning, and by 10:30, 11, the vendors are starting to close up because they have to be out of the parking lot by noon. Fun place to go to. Sometimes some months are better than others, some deals are better than others, but it's a lot of fun. Another view of the same thing on the same event. This is Panofsky Auditorium. It's located on the campus of Stanford Linear Accelerator, a high energy particle physics establishment. And this is where the Homebrew Computer Club had its meetings. I have a computer club that I belong to that still exists. We're a much smaller group, so we don't meet in this big auditorium. We meet in a smaller room, probably a third the size of this room, right behind me, not too far away, but on the same campus. And this is the actual auditorium. I don't think it's changed much since the 70s. But you can see it's a good-sized auditorium. Got some projectors, got some screens. Computer History Museum, place I love to go to. The actual building was originally owned by Silicon Graphics. It was their headquarters. They came upon hard times. They sold it to the Computer History Museum, who happened to have enough in endowments to make the purchase, or at least put a down payment on it. So they're the current tenants. And a couple of views of that. The Computer History Museum has gone through a couple changes. They originally started out in some Quonset huts on the military base at Moffett Field, just a couple miles away, and I'll have some pictures of that. This is in what they call their visible storage exhibit, which no longer exists. It was closed down and replaced with a newer exhibit, but I've taken these pictures a couple of years ago, and here they have racks of microcomputers. You can see it's like a Mac 512. There's an Apple II, probably an Apple II, maybe a II Plus. I think that's an Osborne. Radio Shack, Trash 80. Again, all sorts of stuff here. Looks like same rack different view. Looks like there's a Lisa. Looks like it must be an Apple IIc. IBM. Again, all sorts of computers, and for people that have owned a number of computers, it's a lot of fun going in and say, oh, I've had that, or, you know, my best friend had that. Their calculator display, same sort of thing. And I have the HB35, which I think is this one. But again, lots of calculators to look at. They do have at least one Apple one. They may have two, I'm not sure, but this is the one that was on display there, and it's on display in the new museum.
Do they run it?
I'm sorry?
Do they run it?
I don't think so. You can see there's no connections to it. But it does have the original chips. This is a Cray microcomputer. We've got someone here from Cray. I think he left, what, yesterday?
I think that was Rich Strayer.
Right. So this is sort of an interesting device. It is a real Cray computer. It's actually sitting down in the lobby on the main floor, and they're basically using as seating. Place to sit down and rest your weary bones. And here's another Apple One, but this one is different than the other one, I believe, so they must have two of them on display. And again, this does have the keyboard and some of the other peripherals attached to it. Closer view of the same thing, and I've always meant to compare this one to the first one we saw to see whether it is a different machine or just one that's reworked. This is a prototyping board for the Palm Pilot. Anyone remember the Palm Pilot PDA?
Yeah.
And that was a local company, and a number of the early innovators and officers of the company are on the board of the Computer History Museum, so we've got a good presence of the Palm device. Another view of that Apple One. Every time I went into the museum, I think I took a picture of the Apple One to see if it moved. We got prototyping board. Another Apple One, same thing. I think this is the blue box, the infamous blue box. Captain Crunch. And that same Cray moved to a different location. It was at a different time. This is an Apple II. It's actually not running. What you see on the screen is just a piece of lucite with some chessboards on it to mimic, I guess, the Sargon game. But they have a demonstration of computer chess, and they use as an example the Apple II. They had some other things. Very nice exhibit. TRS-80, a couple different views. Yearly Commodore PETs, Apple IIs. And this is the new exhibit that is currently available now. These pictures were taken, I think they were taken just last summer. Went over there before I went over to my mom's house. But again, this is towards the end of the exhibit, but they have a number of historically significant computers on display. I was always interested in the Sinclair computers because they were one of the ones that came out with a very inexpensive computer early on. This is the X80, I think, is the one that I was familiar with. Again, it shows $186. Atari 800, for those gamers that are out there. Franklin Ace 100, this is a Apple clone. And Apple sued the pants off of them. They had to recall this from the market. They redesigned the computer so it didn't utilize the Apple ROMs. And Franklin still was able to introduce some product that worked. This is CPM, WordStar. And again, I'm not familiar with a lot of these computers. Now the Altair 8800, we saw a upgraded version upstairs this morning. If you were in the lounge,
Cool. Can you go back one?
let's see if I can. Yeah, there we go.
Go back one more.
One more.
The computer on the top is not, any other people are, isn't that an IMSI?
Yeah, MSI 8080.
Okay. Cool. I always thought those were cool.
So the Altair with all the switches, again, we've got a newer version upstairs that makes things a lot more convenient than pushing toggle switches. TV typewriter, built by Don Lancaster, who's famous in the Silicon Valley industry.
I think, didn't we just have an interview with him in Just GS? No, that was Don Worth.
Kim Wanigan, early computer. Ohio Scientific, the computer. Again, the Apple I, and I think this is the same one we saw early on in the show. And Apple II. We'll talk about the Apple II and Apple I, IBM PC. They've got some ads. They've got a lot of video in the museum, so you can spend a lot of time watching all the videos. A lot of it quotes of historical significance. This is the guy that designed a bike that I think he went cross country with this, but it has a number of computers powered by this solar cell in the back. He's got a couple computers, wireless radios. So as he was biking along on this little recumbent bike, he was also transmitting and delogging and all sorts of stuff.
You need one of those, Martin.
Have one of those.
You have one.
And this is one thing that's really neat about the museum is that most of the stuff is something you can actually get your nose right up to. You'll see signs all over the place saying do not touch, because you technically could touch it. They do ask you not to touch the exhibits. But you can get real close and get a real good look at a lot of stuff. Well worth the time if you ever get to Mountain View, California. Get another view. And again, Palm Pilot prototype, I think we saw that before. Another Palm display, again, adds on software and the progression of software. Again, more ads, more computers. It's probably a 9 Plus or maybe 512. Lisa. Pong, this is an interesting device. This is the first Pong device, and it was designed by Mr. Alcorn and was basically made out of surplus parts that they had on hand. They built up the computer, used the monitor inside, and installed them in a local bar, along with some other video games and pinball games, that sort of thing. That was part of their side business at the time. And there's a video of him describing how he made the device and how they installed it in this bar. And normally they'd go back to the bar every 2 or 3 weeks and empty out the change boxes. That was what they used to pay for everything. And after, I guess, a couple of days of this Pong being installed, they got a call from the owner, and he said, "Your machine's broken, it's not working anymore." You know, Alcorn was the technician that built it, so he figured, well, I realized that this is made of old parts. You know, it wasn't built to be a very rugged device on all the time, but I'll go out and see what we can do. They're common parts, so we should be able to fix it. So he brought out his toolkit and was all set to go. He opened up the coin box, and it was so stuffed with coins that it had jammed the machine. So he opened up the box. All the coins fell out. He said he filled his pockets with quarters and was able to close up the device, and it worked fine. Nothing wrong with the machine. It was just so popular that they filled up the coin box, you know, many times faster than any of the other games in the bar had. Took that back to Nolan Bushnell and told them the story, and then they decided that they had product, and the rest is history. Again, another of other game player consoles. I'm not a game player, so I'm not. Here it is. 2 weeks after he installed the Pong game.
Very 2600.
2600 prototype. lighting systems in the popular games. Video channel map. These are different printer mechanisms. The print chain is the one on the left, drum line printers on the right. A couple of different views. Laser and optics assembly, joysticks. I have that TG Products joystick at home, so I put that in the center of the picture. They've got a lot of different joystick designs there. Joysticks used for a graphics application at SLAC, Stanford Linear Accelerator. Okay. Let's go through different languages of keyboards. Laser printers. Xerox PARC is again in the Palo Alto area, towards the top of the map we started with. PowerPC predecessor. They've got some big iron there too. This is one of the first Winchester, hard drives. That's a 5 megabyte hard drive, all those platters. Early test scoring machine, a floppy disk drive with Steve. Again, more calculators. More big iron. Here's some friendly faces. This is when the Computer History Museum was at the Quonset huts at Moffett Field.
Huh. I know those sharks.
And the Pixar computer, again, I think this is the same computer. Babbage engine, Babbage difference engine. It was a mechanical calculator. Designed in the 1850s, I think, and not built until recently. Only 2 models in existence, one here and one in England. That's the output, that's what they do. Adobe's close by, this is in downtown San Jose. The mothership, Apple Computer, their headquarters. eBay is close by. This is Google. They've got a lot of art on the property. Google has a bunch of bikes that they allow the employees to use to get between buildings. We've got a lot of buildings, and it's an easier, more environmentally friendly way of letting all the people ride around on their bikes. This is a local electronic surplus store that's been in business for many years, the place to go for miscellaneous electronic parts. This is Homestead High School, the alma mater of both Steves. This is, again, close by to where I live. Changed quite a bit since when they went there, but the building's pretty much the same. This is the Hewlett-Packard garage, the infamous garage. And this is Intel. They're located in Santa Clara. And the Intel Museum, another place you might want to go. This is Macworld from a couple of years ago with our good buddy Roger. And again, View, Guy Kawasaki was there that year. Microsoft has an office in Mountain View, very close to the Computer History Museum. And they do a lot of the Macintosh software there. McAfee is that brown building there. NVIDIA makes the video chips. Qualcomm, all sorts of other chips, close by. Yahoo. Yahoo's all over the valley. I don't know how long they're going to be there, but that's what I have. Did I make it? Good. Any questions? What I was going to do is I had a movie made of this. I was going to post that rather than the individual pictures, and I'll send you a copy. You can post it.
That'd be wonderful.
I think
Thank
it's
you.
appropriate.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much.